The cowboy woke before the sun, as he always did. The sky was still dark, and the land was quiet. The wind moved slow across the open fields. Lay still for a moment and listened to the old house breathe. Every sound felt heavy on his chest. He stood up and pulled on his boots. They were worn and cracked like the land outside this place had been his whole life. Was also the reason his shoulders felt bent forward even when he stood straight. He stepped outside and looked over the ranch. The fences leaned in places. The barn roof sagged a little more each year. The well had not worked right for months. He knew all of this before he looked still. He looked every morning as if hoping something had fixed itself overnight. His days followed the same pattern: feed the animals, check the land, fix what he could with his own hands. What he could not fix, he tried not to think about thinking about it. Made his chest tight. People in town thought he was strong. They said he was built for this life, they said. The land suited him. He nodded when they spoke. He did not tell them how tired he felt. Did not tell them how some nights he stared at the ceiling until morning after. His father passed. The weight of the ranch fell fully on him. There was no ceremony. Long goodbye, just silence and work waiting. The next morning, he buried his grief in the dirt and kept going there. It's also his younger sister. She still lived with him in the old house. She tried to help when she could. She cooked simple meals and cleaned. She never complained. That made him feel worse. He wanted to protect her from the truth about the bills. The truth about how close they were to losing everything. He smiled for her. He told her things would be fine. I felt like another stone in his chest. By mid-morning, the sun rose higher. The heat pressed down on him. Sweat ran down his back. His hands ached. He welcomed the pain. Pain meant he was busy. Busy meant he did not have to think. The well was his biggest worry. Without it, the land would dry. Without the land, there was nothing left. He tried fixing it himself many times. It failed again. Calling for help cost money. He did not have at noon. He sat on the steps of the barn. He drank water slowly. He looked out at the open land. It was wide and quiet and lonely. Sometimes he felt like he was the only person left in the world. He remembered when the ranch felt full of la flafte voices, his father walking the land with him. Those memories came back without warning. They hit him hardest. When he was alone, he pushed the memories away and stood up. There was always more work. There was always something that needed his hands stopping. Meant feeling. Feeling was dangerous, and the afternoon clouds gathered far away. They promised rain, but never came close enough. That was how hope felt to him lately. Always visible, never reaching him. As evening came, the light turned. Soft shadows grew long across the fields. The animals settled down. The land grew quiet again. This was the hardest time of day. When the work ended, there was nothing left to distract him. Silence filled every space. His thoughts grew loud. He wondered how long he could keep this up. He wondered what would happen if he failed. He never said these thoughts out loud, not to his sister, not to anyone. A cowboy was supposed to endure. He believed that once. Now it just felt lonely. That night, he sat at the small kitchen table. The house smelled of old wood and dust. A single light hung above him. He spread papers in front of him, bills. He barely understood numbers that did not add up. He rubbed his eyes. They burned from exhaustion. He felt older than his years. The room felt heavy. He folded the papers and pushed them aside. Some problems had no easy answer. Before bed, he stepped outside once more. Stars filled the sky. They looked endless. He wondered if anyone out there felt as lost as he did. He doubted. I went to sleep with the same weight on his chest, the weight he carried every day. The weight no one else could see. He did not know yet that this was the last night he would carry it alone. Not yet. Was early morning when she arrived at the edge of the ranch. Her car had broken down a few miles back. She had been walking along the dusty road hoping someone would come by. She saw the barn in the distance. The land stretched wide and empty, but the house looked alive with smoke from the chimney. She walked faster as she felt the sun warm her back. When she reached the gate, she saw the cowboy standing there. He was leaning on the fence, looking over his fields. He turned and looked at her. There was surprise on his face. He had not expected anyone this far out. He studied her carefully. She looked tired, but calm there. Was something about the way she carried herself that made him lower his guard. She spoke first, her voice soft and steadyish, explained that her car had broken down and she needed water though. Cowboy nodded and pointed toward the house. He motioned for her to follow. The walk to the house was quiet, neither spoke much. The wind moved through the fields and carried a dry smell of earth. He noticed her eyes looked around with care and curiosity. She was not the type to rush or complain. That caught his attention. Inside the house, she was careful not to disturb anything. She moved slowly through the room. She smiled politely at his sister, who was quietly folding laundry. She did not ask too many questions. She just offered help where it was needed. The cowboy watched her from across the kitchen. He felt a strange lightness he had not expected anyone to care about small things on this land. He was used to carrying everything alone. As she poured water from the well, she asked simple questions about the ranch. He answered without thinking much, though words came easily. It felt good to speak without pretending. They worked side by side, fixing small problems. The fence needed mending. The barn door had a hinge that stuck. She lifted, held, and handed tools. It was quiet work, but together they moved faster than he ever imagined. He realized she did not judge the ranch. She did not point out what was wrong. She simply helped where she could. That was a new experience for him. During a break, they sat under a tree. The air was warm and smelled of dry grass. She drank slowly from her bottle and watched the sky. He said little but felt a relief. Somehow her presence made the work feel lighter. She asked about his father. He hesitated. The words were heavy in his mouth, but she waited patiently. She did not press. She simply nodded and gave him space to speak. For the first time in years, he told someone small pieces of his story. He spoke of the early mornings, the broken wealth, a worry for his sister. He did not tell everything. He did not have toit. Was enough that she listened. By afternoon, the sun grew hotter. They took breaks more often. She shared small stories about her life, simple things that made him smile quietly to himself. He noticed how rare it was to hear someone speak without hurry or judgment. She noticed the exhaustion in his hands and shoulders. She suggested ways to ease the pain, small adjustments that made a difference. He listened because he trusted her instinct. It was strange, too. Have someone care without expecting anything back. When a storm threatened far in the distance, they hurried to the barn. They secured animals and tools. Even in silence, they moved together efficiently. He realized he had never shared such work with anyone who cared. By evening, the sky turned soft shades of orange and pink. She suggested dinner. He was hesitant, but she smiled and said they could eat simple food. Sister prepared a small meal, and the three sat together. Conversation was gentle, no heavy words about debt or failure, just small things about the land and the sky. He felt a rare peace. He felt lighter. He noticed he had smiled more in the day than he had in weeks. After dinner, she helped wash the dishes. He watched her. He realized he had been lonely, but not really alone. She was a stranger, but she had come to the right place at the right time. Later, she sat outside with him. They watched the stars emerge, one by one. She spoke softly about the world beyond the ranch. He did not answer much. He just listened and let himself relax. The weight on his chest seemed smaller. That night she stayed in a small guest room. He realized he trusted her presence. He did not feel the constant ache of responsibility as sharply. Something about her calm made the world feel easier. Before sleep, he thought about how rare it was to meet someone who arrived quietly and simply stayed. He wondered how he had lived so long without even knowing he needed help. It was the start of something he could not yet name, but it felt important. The night passed with no storms. He slept more deeply than he had in months. The weight of the ranch was still there, but it did not feel crushing. Someone was here, someone. Kurdan, that made all the difference. He did not know how much longer she would stay. He did not know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long time, he felt hope that he could carry on without feeling alone. The next morning, the cowboy woke to the soft light of dawn. He felt different. The presence of the stranger in the house made the air feel lighter. He got up quietly and moved through his morning routine. Did not rush, but he did not linger either. She was already awake. She had moved to the porch to watch the sky. She waved and smiled softly. Nodded back. He did not know what to say, yet he felt an urge to speak. Breakfast was simple. They ate quietly. The sister was busy in the kitchen preparing food. No one forced words out of each other. The silence was comfortable. After breakfast, they walked to the barn. There was work to be done. The cowboy began fixing the well. She stood nearby, handing tools and steadying boards. Notice the way her hands moved calmly. It was a contrast to his hurried motions. Hours passed without much conversation. Then, while he was kneeling by the well, she asked a question, not a demanding one, just a gentle inquiry about how long he had been taking care of the land. He did not answer right away. The words felt heavy. Finally, he spoke. He told her some things about his father and the years since he passed. He could feel the weight of his words. Each sentence reminded him of all he had carried alone. She did not interrupt or offer advice. Simply nodded and listened. He realized he had been talking without realizing it. The afternoon came and the sun hung high in the sky. They rested under a tree. The cowboy did not know how to explain the relief he felt. He had never allowed himself to speak of these things to anyone. Not like this. She reached out and put a hand on his shoulder. It was brief. It was gentle. It was enough. He felt a strange lightness. He wanted to say something, but words were difficult. He had spent so long holding everything in. She leaned closer and whispered. Her words were soft and steady. "I'm here to help you." He froze for a moment. Her words did not demand anything. They did not judge or expect. They simply offered presence. For the first time in years, he felt a crack in the wall around his heart. The burden that had been pressing on him felt lighter, not gone, but lighter. There was space for something else, something he had not known he needed. They sat there for a while, neither moving much. The wind stirred the grass around them. The sun began to lower in the sky. The quiet was different now. It was a shared silence, not one of loneliness. He thought about all the nights he had lain awake with worry, all the times he had felt he had to be strong and alone. He realized that strength did not mean never asking for help. He realized that some burdens were too heavy for one person. She stayed with him through the work that afternoon. Her presence was steady. She noticed the strain in his movements and offered small adjustments, simple ways to ease the weight of his body. Followed without thinking much. It felt natural. By evening, the tasks were done. Animals were settled. The barn was quiet. They walked back toward the house. The sky was painted in warm colors. The wind carried a softer sound inside the house. The sister had prepared a small meal. They ate together. Conversation was light. They spoke of ordinary things, the work of the day and the sky outside. He realized he had laughed quietly. It was a sound he had not heard from himself in a long time. After dinner, they moved to the porch. The sky was darkening and stars began to appear. They sat side by side. He could feel the presence of someone who truly understood. It was a presence that did not need words. The whisper she had shared in the afternoon lingered. It became a steady comfort. Here could still feel the weight of responsibility, but it no longer pressed so hard on his chest. He could breathe more. Isolate came slowly. The house was quiet. He thought about the day and the change that had come with it. Realized that he could face tomorrow with more courage than he had felt for years. He lay down that night with a different feeling, a sense that he was not alone in this life. The whisper that had seemed so simple had shifted something deep inside him. He slept with a lighter heart. And the morning, the land would still need work. The well would still need attention. The animals would still need care, but he no longer felt the burden as crushing. He could carry it with support. He did not yet know how much longer she would stay. He did not know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time he felt that he could face it, felt that he could manage the weight of his life without carrying it alone. It was a quiet change, a small moment that held enormous meaning, the kind of moment that shifted the heart without demanding anything. Realized that help could arrive gently and that it could transform everything. That was enough to let him rest for the first time in a long time. Weight of the day had not vanished, but he felt ready to face it again with someone by his side. Next morning, the cowboy woke earlier than usual. The air was cool, and the sun had not yet risen. He moved quietly through the house. Stranger was already awake on the porch, looking at the land. She smiled softly when she saw him. He nodded and walked. Outside, the morning was calm. The animals were stirring, but the fields were quiet. The well still needed repair. The fences still leaned in places. But for the first time, he felt a sense of possibility. She came with him to the barn. They began working together. She handed him tools and steady boards. She held the heavy pieces while he hammered. His movement was precise and careful. The work was not easy. The sun climbed higher in the sky and sweat ran down their backs, but they moved faster than he had ever worked. Alone, her presence made the effort lighter. The weight he felt in his chest seemed smaller with every task. They paused for water under the shade of a tree, watched her as she drank slowly, and looked around the land. He realized how rare it was to meet someone who saw the world as it was without rushing or complaining. He felt gratitude that was difficult to speak aloud. They fixed sections of the fence that had been broken for months. They cleared weeds from paths that led to the barn. She showed him small ways to make the work easier on his hands. He followed her guidance without hesitation. The ranch felt alive with movement. When the well finally began to work properly, water rising clean and steady, he could not stop looking at. He had remembered all the nights he had struggled to make it function alone. He smiled quietly to himself. It felt like a victory he had never imagined would come. She stood beside him and said nothing. Her calm presence said more than words could. He realized that help did not always mean giving instructions. Sometimes help was just being there, being steady and patient and present. They took breaks under the trees. He noticed her listening to the sounds of the wind and the land. He realized he had not noticed those sounds in years. Life had been too heavy for him to see the small movements of the world. Afternoon came, and clouds gathered far in the distance. Wind picked up slightly and carried the smell of rain. He hoped it would come not just for the land, but for himself. He wanted renewal. They worked through the day, repairing small sections of the barn and moving. Each task completed felt like a small triumph. He felt pride in ways he had not allowed himself in a long time. The work was hard, but satisfying. She helped him organize the barn, arrange tools and supplies. She showed him that the ranch could be managed without constant struggle. It was a lesson in patience and caravaning. Fell and the sky turned soft shades of orange and pink. They returned to the house. The sister had prepared a simple meal. They ate together. The conversation was gentle and easy. They spoke of ordinary things about the land and the weather and small joys. He laughed quietly at something she said. The sound surprised him. He realized he had not laughed like that in months. He felt a warmth inside that had been missing. At the missing after dinner, they returned to the porch. The stars were visible one by one. Night air was cool. They sat side by side. He felt a connection that did not need explanation. Whispers she had shared days before still lingered. I am here to help you. It had become a steady comfort. He no longer felt the crushing weight of responsibility alone. The burden was still there, but manageable. He still realized that life had changed in small ways each day. The work on the ranch was still difficult. The animals still needed care. The land still required attention, but he felt ready, felt capable of facing each challenge with support. She taught him small ways to rest without guilt, ways to ask. The time night fell. The day had passed in a rhythm that felt natural. He watched the stars appear in the sky, reflected on the progress they had made. The ranch felt steadier, the work more manageable, his heart lighter. Went to bed that night with a sense of hope, feeling that tomorrow would be another day of steady progress, the presence of someone who cared. He felt capable of managing the ranch, capable of managing his own heart, capable of living with support and not just endurance. The days ahead would still hold challenges. The work would still be demanding. The land would still test him, but he had learned that he did not have to face everything alone. He had learned that help could arrive quietly and change everything. The light from the stars shone through the window. He felt a quiet gratitude, a sense of peace that had been missing for years. The ranch was still his responsibility, but it no longer felt like an impossible weight. And that night, he slept knowing that change was possible, that a single presence could transform the heaviest burdens, and that help, even in quiet ways, could lift the spirit and lighten the heart. The morning was calm and cool. The cowboy woke with a sense of purpose. He moved through his morning routine with care and focus. The presence of the stranger made the house feel lighter. Conversation was gentle and easy. They spoke of ordinary things and small plans for the day. He noticed how different it felt to start the day with company and support. After breakfast, they went to the barn. The work continued, but it felt easier. They moved together with a rhythm that was smooth and natural. The stranger handed tools and steady. Bordsey held heavy pieces while he hammered every. Movement was thoughtful and deliberate. The work was demanding, but he felt strong. Her presence made him feel capable. Realized that he no longer feared the tasks ahead. The land still required care and attention, but he had learned to face it without panic or dread. They repaired fences that had been broken for months, cleared weeds from paths leading to the barn, organized tools and supplies. Each. For water, the breeze was gentle and smelled of earth and grassy. Looked at her quietly. He did not need to speak. The shared silence was enough. Afternoon came and the sun hung high in the sky. They worked steadily. The animals were fed and cared for. Barn was organized and neat. The well was running steadily. He thought about the days before she had arrived, the nights filled with worry, the weight that had pressed so heavily on him. He realized how much had changed in a short time. By evening, the work was done. The sky was painted in warm shades of orange and pink. They returned to the house. His sister had prepared a simple meal. They ate together in calm and quiet. The conversation was light and filled with small laughter. After dinner, they moved to the porch. The stars appeared one by one. The night air was cool and refreshing. Felt a connection that went beyond words. He reflected on all that had happened. The whisper she had shared days ago. It shifted something deep inside him. I'm here to help. Those words had been simple but powerful. They had lifted the heaviest burden he had carried alone. He realized that life had changed in small ways each day. The work on the ranch was still demanding. Land still needed attention, but he felt ready. He felt capable. He felt supported. She had shown him small ways to rest, without guilt, ways to ask for help, without feeling weak, ways. Stars filled the sky. He felt gratitude and peace. He had learned that help could arrive quietly and it could transform everything. He thought about tomorrow and the days ahead. He knew there would be challenges. The ranch would still test him. The animals would still need care, but he no longer felt alone. He had learned that support could make the impossible manageable. He went to sleep with a lighter heart. His sense of hope filled him. The weight he had carried for years was no longer crushing it, had been lifted by a presence that arrived at the right time. In the morning, he would continue his work. He would face each task with strength and care. Alone, the ranch was still his responsibility, but it no longer felt like an impossible burden. The land, the animals, and the work were still real, but so was the support and presence that had changed his world. He felt ready for the future. The challenges ahead would be met with calm and patience. The weight of life would no longer press down with the same force. He had learned that even a single moment of help could transform years of struggle, and as he drifted into sleep, he knew that the ranch would thrive. He would thrive, and the whisper that had reached him gently would remain in his heart. Am here to help you. It was a simple truth that carried him forward. The life ahead felt possible, the burdens manageable, and the heart lighter than it had ever been. The next morning, the cowboy awoke to the soft light spilling through the windows. He felt a quiet energy inside him. The presence of the stranger in the house gave him a sense of calm and readiness. He moved through his routine carefully and deliberately. Breakfast was shared in silence. His sister sat nearby, quietly folding laundry. The stranger poured coffee and placed a simple meal on the table. He noticed how ordinary and peaceful the moment felt. As their breakfast, they walked toward the barn together. The work ahead was still demanding, but there was a rhythm to it. Now they moved in sync without speaking much. Tools were passed and boards lifted with care. Each task felt lighter because it was shared. They repaired sections of the fence and cleared pathways. Completed task brought a quiet sense of accomplishment. He noticed how much easier it was to face the work with someone by his side. The land no longer felt lonely. They paused under a tree for a moment of rest. The breeze was gentle and smelled of fresh grass. He looked at the stranger. There was no rush and no judgment. He realized how rare it was to find someone so steady and patient. The well needed attention again. They worked together steadily, held boards and passed tools. As he fixed the mechanism, he felt a strange sense of relief. The work was hard, but it was manageable now. By noon, they rested under the shade. They drank water slowly and watched the sun move across the sky, though. Air was filled with quiet sounds of the land. He realized he had not listened like this in years. The small sounds of life had been lost under the weight of worry. The afternoon was busy, but productive. The animals were fed and cared for. Barn was organized, the fences repaired. He noticed the land looking brighter somehow. It was not just the sunlight, it was the effort and care they had put into it. They worked side by side without words. The rhythm of the day became a comfort. He felt a new kind of strength. It was not the strength of carrying everything alone. It was the strength of sharing the load and moving together. They paused again as clouds gathered far away. The wind stirred the grass. The promise of rain hung in the air. He welcomed it, not just for the land, but for the feeling of renewal it brought. The evening came with warm light across the fields. They returned to the house. The sister had prepared a simple meal. They ate together quietly. The conversation was light. They spoke of ordinary things. Laughter that had been absent returned. Slowly after dinner they moved to the porch. Stars began to appear in the sky one by one. The night air was cool and refreshing. He felt the comfort of presence that required nothing in return. He thought about all the days that had passed, nights filled with worry and solitude, the burdens that had pressed down for so long. He realized that a single presence had changed the weight of his life. The whisper she had shared remained in his mind, "I am here to help." Youth words were simple, but powerful. They had opened a space for trust and hope. The ranch was still his responsibility. The work still required attention. The animals still needed care, but he no longer felt alone and had learned to rely on support without shame. He reflected on the changes in himself. He felt calmer and more capable. He could face challenges with patience. He could accept help and still be strong. The night grew deeper. Stars shone brightly. He felt a quiet gratitude. The weight he had carried for years was lighter. He could sleep peaceful. Tomorrow would bring more work. The land would demand attention the animals would need care, but he felt ready to meet it all. He had learned that strength was not in carrying alone. Strength was in sharing and moving together. He lay down to rest. The night was quiet. The stars were still visible through the windows. He felt hope for the first time in a long while. The presence of someone who cared had transformed his world. In the morning he would rise again. He would face the tasks of the ranch. He would remember the lessons of patience and care, and he would carry the quiet truth that even one person who offers help can change everything. The life ahead felt possible, the burdens manageable. Heart lighter than it had been for years, he felt a steady strength that came from shared effort and quiet support. He slept with a sense of peace and readiness for all that tomorrow would bring. The sun rose slowly over the ranch, casting a golden light across the fields, though. Cowboy woke with a sense of purpose he had not felt for years. The presence of the stranger in the house had transformed the air around him, making each breath feel lighter. He moved through his morning routine carefully, though. Familiar tasks that once felt overwhelming now seemed manageable. He stepped outside and looked over the land. The fences were straighter, and the barn looked cared for. Animals were calm in their pens. The well was running steadily. The work ahead was still demanding, but he felt ready for it. The stranger had already begun walking toward the barn. She nodded to him with a gentle smile that carried no judgment. He felt a strange calmness in that small gesture. They moved toward the barn together, without speaking much. There was a rhythm to their steps that felt natural and easy. The morning work began. They repaired sections of the fence that had been broken for months. They cleared weeds from the pathways leading to the barn. She handed him tools without hesitation and held heavy boards steady while he hammered. Every movement was precise and careful. The work was not easy, but it felt lighter. With her presence, hours passed quickly as they worked. The sun climbed high in the sky, and sweat ran down their backs. Cowboy felt a strange sense of relief for the first time in years. He felt that he was not carrying the weight alone. Her presence made the burden lighter and the tasks feel achievable. They paused under the shade of a tree for water. Breeze was gentle and smelled of fresh grass and earth. He watched her quietly and realized how rare it was to meet someone who saw the world as it was without rushing or complaining. He felt gratitude, but did not know how to express it. The work continued through the day. They organized the barn carefully, moved hay and feed to proper places, repaired small sections of the roof that had been leaking each. Completed task brought a quiet sense of accomplishment. The land looked brighter. Somehow, not just because of the sunlight, but because of the effort and care they had put into it. By noon they rested again under the tree. They drank water slowly and watched the clouds move across the sky. The air was filled with the sounds of the land. He noticed birds singing and the rustle of leaves in the wind. He realized that he had not noticed these small details in years. The weight of worry had drowned out the small joys of life. The afternoon was busy with more work. The animals were fed and watered, the fences were strengthened, paths cleared and organized. He felt a growing sense of pride in the work and in the land that had been neglected for so long. The day moved on. The sun lowered in the sky. They worked quietly side by side, though. Rhythm of their movements became comforting. He felt a strength that came from shared effort, not from enduring alone. He understood that true strength was in partnership. Evening came, and they returned to the house. The sister had prepared a simple meal. They ate together with quiet conversation. They spoke of ordinary things, the weather, the land, and small plans for the next day. He felt laughter returning slowly, was a sound he had not heard from himself in months. In months after dinner, they moved to the porch. Stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky. The night air was cool and refreshing. He felt the comfort of presence that did not require explanation. He realized he could relax and still be strong. The whisper she had shared days ago lingered in his mind. I am here to help you. Those words had shifted something deep inside him. The heaviest burden he had carried for years felt lighter. He understood that support could arrive quietly and transform everything. The days passed in a rhythm that was calm and steady. He worked the land with purpose and care. The stranger continued to offer quiet guidance and practical help. She showed him small ways to ease the burden of physical labor and mental worry. The ranch was transforming under their combined efforts. The cowboy noticed changes in himself as well. He felt calmer and more patient. He could face challenges without panic or fear, accepted help without feeling weak. He learned that strength was not measured by carrying everything alone. By the end of the week, the ranch looked cared for and alive. The fences were solid and straight. The barn was organized and neat. The paths were clear. The well ran steadily, and the animals were healthy and calm. The work that had once felt impossible now felt manageable. Evenings were spent on the porch watching the stars. They spoke gently of ordinary things and shared quiet laughter. Here felt gratitude that was deep and difficult to put into words. The burden of loneliness had lifted and hope was returning. Reflected on the past months, the nights filled with worry and solitude, the constant pressure of responsibility. Realized that one presence had transformed the weight of his life. The whisper had been simple, yet powerful. The days continued in this rhythm. The work was still demanding, but it was shared. He learned to pace himself and to accept guidance. He discovered that life could be managed with patience and support. The land itself seemed to respond to the care. Grass grew greener. The fences stood firm. The barn roof no longer leaked. The animals thrived. The ranch felt alive again. He noticed small joys each day. The sound of birds in the morning, the smell of fresh hay, the movement of clouds across the sky. Had learned to notice life again, to appreciate the present. He thought often about the power of a quiet presence, how a single person could transform the weight of years, how patience and simple support could lift a heavy heart. He felt gratitude that he carried quietly. The nights were peaceful, the stars bright. He slept with a lighter heart than he had in years. He woke with purpose and calm. Weight he had carried for so long had shifted. He was not alone anymore. He continued to work with care and dedication. Land required attention, but he no longer felt overwhelmed. The stranger offered practical guidance and quiet support. Each day reinforced the lesson that help was not weakness. With strength shared, the weeks passed. The ranch transformed into a place of life and hope. The fences were strong. The barn organized. The animals healthy and calm. The land looked cared for. He found himself smiling more icily. He laughed quietly with the sister and the stranger. He felt a warmth and peace he had not known for years. The work was hard but meaningful. Companionship made it bearable and even joyful. He realized he had changed, was calmer and more capable. He could face challenges with patience. He accepted help without shame. He had learned that strength was not endurance alone, it was partnership and shared effort. Teach. Day brought new lessons, small ways to ease labor, small ways to care for himself, and the land small. Reminders of joy and presence. He appreciated these lessons quietly, and fully evenings were spent quietly on the porch watching the stars, sharing gentle conversation and laughter. He felt a steady peace, a heart, lighter than it had been in years. Reflected on the power of a quiet whisper, "I am here to help you." Those words had transformed his life. He understood the depth of their meaning. Support and presence could lift the heaviest burdens. He continued to care for the ranch with calm and patience. Land thrived under careful attention. The animals were happy and healthy. The barn was organized and neat. The fences were strong. Had learned to pace himself, to accept guidance, to share the work and responsibility. The burdens were no longer crushing. They were manageable and even meaningful. The days passed in a steady rhythm: work in the morning, rest and reflection in the afternoon, quiet meals and conversation in the evening, watching the stars at night. The life was simple but full of meaning. He noticed beauty in the ordinary, the sound of wind in the trees, the movement of clouds, the smell of earth and grass. Small joys of life returned to him. He thought often about the past, the nights of worry and solitude, constant pressure, the loneliness. He realized that a single presence had changed everything. The whisper lingered in his mind. "I'm here to help you." He felt gratitude and peace. Weight of years had lifted. He was ready to face the future. The ranch thrived under care. The land was alive, the fences strong, the barn organized, the animals healthy and content. He continued to work with calm and focus. The stranger offered guidance and support. The burdens were shared. The weight was lighter. The heart was at peace. Evenings were spent quietly on the porch. The stars above, gentle conversation, laughter that had returned slowly, a sense of peace that had been missing for years. He had learned the value of presence, the power of support, the importance of patience, the strength in shared effort. Life ahead felt possible, the burdens manageable, the heart lighter than it had been for years. He faced each day with calm and readiness. He knew that ranch and his life would thrive because of the care and presence that had transformed everything. Sun rose slowly over the horizon, casting a golden light across the fields of the ranch. Cowboy woke with a sense of purpose and calmed. The land stretched wide and alive with the promise of a new day. He moved through his morning routine with care and focus. Each task that had once felt heavy now felt manageable and meaningful. He stepped outside and looked over the ranch. The fences stood straight and firm. The barn looked well cared for. The animals were calm and healthy. The well ran steadily. The land felt alive with the effort and care that had been poured into it. The stranger had already begun walking toward the barn. She nodded with a soft smile that carried no judgment. He felt a strange calmness in that small gesture. They moved toward the barn together without speaking much. There was a rhythm to their steps that felt natural and easy. The morning work began. They repaired sections of the fence that had been weak for months, cleared weeds from paths leading to the barn, organized tools and supplies. Every task completed brought a quiet sense of accomplishment. Work was demanding, but it felt lighter with her presence. Hours passed. Quickly the sun climbed higher in the sky, and sweat ran down their backs. He felt relief he had not known in years. For the first time he realized he was not carrying the weight alone. Her presence made the burden lighter and the work achievable. They paused under the shade of a tree for water. The breeze was gentle and smelled of fresh grass and earth. He watched her quietly. He realized how rare it was to meet someone who saw the world as it was without rushing or complaining. He felt gratitude, but did not know how to express it. The afternoon work was steady. Animals were fed and cared for. The barn was organized, fences strengthened, paths cleared. Each completed task reinforced a sense of accomplishment and hope. By late afternoon, the sun began to lower. They moved side by side quietly. The rhythm of their work became comforting. He felt a new strength. Strength not from enduring alone, but from sharing the load. He understood that true strength came from partnership. Evening approached, and they returned to the house. The sister had prepared a simple meal. They ate quietly together. Conversation was light and gentle. They spoke of ordinary things about the land, the weather, and small plans for the next day. he felt laughter. Returning slowly, it was a sound he had not heard from himself in months. After dinner, they moved to the porch. The stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky. Night air was cool and refreshing. He felt comfort in her presence that required no words. He realized he could relax and still be strong. He thought often about the whisper she had shared days ago. "I am here to help you." Those words had shifted something deep inside him. The heaviest burden he had carried for years felt lighter. He understood that support could arrive quietly and transform everything. The days continued in a calm rhythm: work in the morning, rest and reflection in the afternoon, quiet meals in the evening, watching the stars at night. The life was simple but filled with meaning. Notice small joys each day: the sound of birds in the morning, the smell of fresh hatha, movement of clouds across the sky. Had learned to notice life again and to appreciate the present. The ranch itself seemed to respond to the care. Grass grew greener. Fences stood firm. The barn roof was solid. The animals thrived. Land felt alive. He found himself smiling more easily. He laughed quietly with the sister. In the stranger he felt warmth and peace. While work was hard, but meaningful companionship made it bearable and joyful. He reflected on how much he had changed. He was calmer and more capable. He could face challenges with patience. He accepted help without shame. He had learned that strength was not measured by enduring alone, it was in shared effort. In partnership, each day brought new lessons: small ways to ease physical labor, small ways to care for the land and himself, small reminders of joy and presence. He absorbed these lessons quietly, and fully evenings on the porch were calmed. The stars above, gentle conversation, laughter that returned slowly, a sense of peace he had not known for years. He thought about the power of presence, how a single person could change the weight of years, how patience and support could lift a heavy heart. He felt gratitude deeply. And quietly, the ranch thrived under careful attention. The land was alive: fences, strong barn, organized animals, healthy, and continued to work with calm and focus. The stranger offered guidance and support. The burdens were shared, the weight lighter, the heart peaceful. The rhythm of the days was steady: morning, work, afternoon, reflection, evening, meals. And Star's life was simple but full of meaning. He noticed beauty in ordinary things: the sound of wind and tree, movement of clouds, smell of earth and grass. Small joys of life returned. He reflected on the past nights of worry, loneliness, constant pressure. One presence had transformed everything. The whisper lingered in his mind: "I am here to help." Yet had shifted his life. He understood its depth: support and presence could lift the heaviest burdens. He continued to care for the ranch with calm and patience. Land thrived, animals were happy, barn organized, fences strong. He had learned to pace himself, to accept guidance, to share work and responsibility. Burdens were no longer crushing, they were manageable, and meaningful days passed in rhythm, work, shared burden, lighter heart, peaceful evenings on the porch, stars above, gentle conversation, laughter, peace, and contentment. He had learned the value of presence, power of support, importance of patience, strength, and shared effort. The life ahead felt possible: burdens manageable, heart lighter than it had been for years. He faced each day with calm and readiness. Ranch and life thrived because of care and presence that transformed everything. He slept peacefully each night, woke with purpose and calm. Weight he carried for years had shifted, not alone anymore. He carried hope and steady strength. The ranch transformed: land alive, animals healthy, barn organized, fences strong, tasks manageable, work meaningful. He noticed small joys every day: birds and morning smell of fresh hay, wind moving through trees. Life and presence returned evenings. Peaceful stars above, gentle conversation, laughter, heart light and calm. He had learned that strength was not endurance alone, it was shared effort, patience, and present support that transformed burdens. Life continued in calm rhythm: morning, work, afternoon, reflection, evening, meals. And stars simple and meaningful. He reflected often on past struggles. The whisper that had arrived quietly changed everything: "I am here to help you." Words simple and powerful, lifting years of weight. He felt gratitude deeply. Ranch thrived, land alive, and animals healthy, barn neat, fences strong, work shared, and meaningful evenings filled with laughter and peace. Stars Shining above life steady and calm, he faced each day with readiness and hope the burden L.